I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And due to my dismal performance at the last meeting, I will demonstrate that I am able to properly recite the Pledge of Allegiance this morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have an agenda before us. Are there any items to add or adjust to the agenda? Great. Well, I'll entertain a motion, please, to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as it reads.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Christine. And there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. So the first item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes of our last meeting and the claims for May 25th. Any discussion? And then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
And I'll second that.
Thank you, Christine. Again, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motion carries. So let's move on to old business. There's two items we're talking about is the general manager process. And I believe, John, you'll take that?
Certainly, commissioners, I will. The first matter on your agenda is the consulting services agreement with Leeward Strategies. That's Jim Darling. It's for the facilitation of your high-level review of your strategic plans and goals and the preparation of the job description. This lengthy negotiation required multiple trips by Steve and I to Tucson to meet with Jim to go over this over the springtime. No, we didn't. It was the contracts there. We simplified our professional services. Jim isn't anticipating traveling to Washington. I can do this remotely. I think he's already begun setting up meetings with staff and teams to do some of the background work. He's received a load of documents from Steve Joke and started to go through that. And he'll have a short slide presentation for you what his steps are going to be. His proposal is scope of work is here, and then we have a contract that we set up there, and it's here for your approval, and authorize the general manager to sign the same on behalf of the district. The motion that I propose is in the request of the agenda item.
And I don't know if Commissioners Jim Darling is prepared to just provide a brief presentation this morning, I think outlining his approach to his work. And so I'd recommend that he provide that presentation before you consider action on the contract.
Great, let's do that then.
And can you let Jim share his screen?
I think I can do that. Let me, I think she already did. Let me try it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you should be able to do that.
So can you see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, I'll go to the beginning here. Okay, you'll see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thanks, Commission, for the opportunity to be here today. And as you know, I worked in Whatcom County for a long time in my port career. And then since that time, I've worked for the last 11 years with public utility districts and port authorities, county government, cities, and the state of Washington on strategic issues for the last 10 or 11 years. So I've got, as Steve mentioned, I've got a very brief presentation just on the strategic assessment for this year in 2021. And if you have any questions as I'm going through this, please interrupt me. But so why now? I think it's obvious to you. My hat's off to the commission and the team, John and Steve, for doing this. You're entering into a significant transition period. You've had a lot of stability for years in your leadership. You have two relatively new commissioners, and of course, Steve is moving on to a new chapter. So the current priorities, which, I don't want to get too much into lingo, but really are goals and strategies that you have, and they're captured in your 2025 plan, and that illustration there is from the cover. And I work with a lot of clients, municipal clients, state, as I said, clients, and the key to moving forward in progress is alignment. And you've made that a priority over the last several years that I've been involved with you. But alignment between the commissioners and between the commission and staff is 90% of strategic planning. And trust me, it's very elusive as we work with clients around the state. So now's a great time to do it. You've got the next general manager coming in a short period of time, so it makes sense. So just briefly, what the process looks like is we're on a timeline to finish this by early July, and Steve and I have tentatively said, I think it's July 6th, your first meeting in July is a presentation back to the commission. Of course, we'll get stuff to you ahead of time before that, but to have a discussion. So that's our target date. And then my understanding is that you'll be moving forward with the sites or the candidate selection firm. They'll start their work right after that. So we're starting the project, as John said, right now. I'm doing the background research. Steve has been sending me documents. We're going to shoot for the week of June 7th to do the initial interviews, and that would be with the commissioners, Steve, and then Steve has selected a few people, senior staff people, to be interviewed that week. And then I'll do some work, and then I'll come back and do final interviews with individual interviews with the commission and Steve around the week of June 21st, and then be ready to go in early July. So why that second round of final interviews? That's because I'm going to discover stuff along the way. We can't predict it now, and we want to get out there to get some clarity. Then once this pre-recruitment phase is completed, then you'll enter into that recruitment phase. And as you can see from my scope of work, I'll be on call by the headhunter firm, the selection firm, to work with them. And one of the things I will provide as part of my deliverables that we'll go on to look at in a second is an updated job description for the general manager position. And then, of course, you move into the selection of the new GM. So there's really two tasks, as I said. The first one is making recommendations regarding your strategic priorities. And really, it's to review them, reaffirm them, or make suggested revisions to those priorities. And as John said, pretty high level at this point. Identify new priorities, and in talking with Steve, do a kind of a first cut preliminary evaluation about the district's ability, capacity to do those, to undertake and pursue those priorities. Nothing in an enormous amount of detail, but just kind of a layman's, all right, you've got the capacity or you don't, and here's how we might need to build it. And then for the new identified priorities, if there's any recommendations I might have for you on how to pursue them, how to bake them into your strategic plan and your overall work plan. Then the second part of task one is this general manager job description to reflect those commission priorities. And then, as I said, support the search firm as requested. Yep, Commissioner?
Do we have a question?
There, I'm unmuted now. It's good to see you, Jim.
You too, Commissioner.
Talk a little bit more about your strategic planning and meeting. Are you going to meet with all three commissioners together? Are you going to, how are you going to do that? Because two are new, like you said.
Yeah.
And we should discuss the past, present, and then future. How do you go about doing that?
So what I found is really effective to do is have individual conversations with folks, with key people, obviously elected officials, commissioners, and key staff, to get me a lay of the land where people are coming from, then put my thoughts together. I may want to check back with you individually about those, but those are not decision-making calls. Those are simply my exploring. But that meeting in July is intended to be that discussion with the commission. That's more of a work study kind of discussion about the priorities. So Commissioner, leading up to this is me just getting up to speed, knowing where people are coming from, and then have a discussion of as a group, then we'll finalize the recommendations. So I guess I wasn't clear about that, so.
Well, the question I ask is, meeting us privately makes it difficult as a board of commissioners to move together on what direction to take. I really enjoy hearing from the other commissioners because they have a lot to, it's interesting what what everybody brings to the table, and I like to hear that because it allows me to think about other things too. How are you going to present that to the three of us so the other two commissioners know what took place with each commissioner you meet with?
Yeah, and that's a good point. So what I typically do in these, and I always have a comment when I start to do interviews, that I don't attribute my findings to any particular individual. I never say, boy, you should have heard what Steve said. It just, it takes a little bit of the honest discussion and out of the process. But to answer your question, I need to get a feel from people individually where they're coming from and what the priorities are and the concerns. And it's a good opportunity to get those expressed. It's only commissioner from my background, so then I can develop a discussion with the three of you and Steve in open session where we discuss these and you can hear from the other commissioners. I just want to get a sense of, are we deeply misaligned? Are we mildly misaligned? And I just find that it's more fruitful to do that on an individual basis initially as part of the research. That's all. But plenty of time for your discussion. I'm totally with you on, you need to hear from the other commissioners, and we'll set that up.
I appreciate your time, Jim, explaining that, because if there's a person that I welcome to lead us, it's you. And so I really appreciate you're on board on this. I know that you'll bring us together as a team so we can move together in that form instead of three individual thoughts. So thank you.
Yeah. So, but your comment is, I hear it, it's, well taken. So I got you. So I'm not going to go into any details here, but just for the commissions to be thinking about, and we did this a few years ago. And the one thing that you'll find with me is that in working with public agencies now for over, embarrassing to say, over 40, maybe 45 years, one of the big things about mission that we don't do well enough, and I, as a former public official, put myself in that bucket, is we don't spend enough time defining why we're doing something. We always want to jump to the what we're going to do and maybe how we're going to do it, but the why we're going to do it, and it's fundamental to your mission at the PUD. Why do you exist and what's your unique role in the community? So we'll have that, a little bit of that discussion. And then just for definition, goals are destination that you want to reach. And I use this kind of corny example, but if Commissioner McCauley and I said, well, our goal is to drive to Chicago. That's a goal. Is when we get to Chicago, we're going to be there, right? Saying we're just going to get in the car and head east is really not a goal. It's sort of an intent. So, and we kind of wrestled with this when we did your strategic plan a few years ago. Goals need to be defined, measurable, and they're a destination, when you reach them. It's hard to do. In public agencies, it's very hard to do. Strategies kind of chart the routes how you get there. So how we're going to get to Chicago is once we're going to drive to Tulsa, and then we're going to fly to St. Louis, and then we're going to take a bus from St. Louis to Chicago. Those are sort of the strategies on how you get to your goal. So just keep that in mind as we start the discussions. And then one thing that you did in your plan, which I thought was terrific, was you called out new initiatives that really, so the reader, the public, why they look at them and they jump out. I think that is a great way to do it too. So right now, the current goals, and these may have changed in the 2025 plan. I'm not going to go through them, but there were 6 major ones, and then there were these new initiatives. The only reason I had the slide up here is to point out to you that your goals are either going to be in 2 buckets. One, they're going to be external facing, what we're going to go do out in the community or for our customers or for different groups in the community, or for things like the environment or water supply. Those are external facing. Then you're going to have some goals that are internal facing, and those are like how we get our house in order. So you've got a good balance of these, and I will tell you, the more mature an organization is, the less internal facing goals they have and the more external. Organizations that are pretty new or haven't evolved very much have a lot of internal facing goals. So just a term to keep in mind. So that's it. I've got I think Steve can give this to you, my email and phone number up there if the commissioners ever want to get in touch with me. But we will, let me get rid of this. Sharing. I'm going to work with Ann to set up that first set of calls the week of the 7th, June 7th, and I would plan like an hour to an hour and a half. They usually don't take that long, but and we can do them by whatever your preference is. And I'll ask her by Zoom, or if you want to do them by phone, either way is fine with me. So I think you'll find it interesting. It's a pretty invigorating process, and I appreciate Commissioner Murphy's. And my apologies for calling you Macaulay a little bit ago, Mr. Commissioner Murphy. I had the Port of Bellingham in my mind there for a minute. But Commissioner Murphy had raises a good point about that this is part of the exploratory process of moving forward and kind of letting some really good, unique, genuine core ideas surface, and then the group can discuss them. So that was not so brief, but there you go.
Thank you, Jim. That was very helpful. What are the questions we have? Mike raised some. Christine, do you have some questions to ask her?
I do, yeah. Thanks, Jim, for presenting. We're excited to work with you. I just was wanting to talk with you a little bit about how we're going to engage our key customers and the public in this process, and what you would recommend there. You know, we're all elected, so we obviously hear from the public during our election cycles, but you know, for me, the fact that, you know, the P is the most important letter in the PUD, right? The public, the people, and how do we get those voices heard? And particularly because we don't have very many customers, it would be possible to talk to at least several of our, you know, our larger customers. So just interested in what you typically do to engage the public in this process.
Well, that's a good question. So it varies, right? We did a strategic project different than this because, as John Sitkin mentioned, it wasn't as high level as this. It was more granular in the weeds. And I can tell you it's public information with the Port of Vancouver, and that was Washington, and that was following, you'll recall in the news, when they were going to bring oil trains in from the Dakotas, transfer oil to ocean-going ships, and it was a big issue. 2 commissioners got replaced, and they parted company with their CEO, and they were a community or an agency that just wasn't connected with the community at all. I mean, you're giving you the extreme. So we spent a year and a half connecting that agency with the community was pretty elaborate. And if you talk to them today, they've done a great job. They are now connected. They're doing wonderful. That was an extreme case. So it really varies. Because of the time frame here, we wanted to get this done by early July before you start the recruitment process. So there's not going to be a lot of opportunity, I don't think, to communicate and reach out to the public other than, and we'll think about this some more, other than maybe Steve or the commissioners doing it in the process about kind of double checking your thoughts with some of your constituents. But if we find out that we've got some new issues or we're not aligned on some previous goals and strategies, that one of the things I have to do for you is give you some recommendations. How do we get aligned on those? And that may be a process you work through following this initial 4 or 5 week effort. Does that make sense? And I'll give you some recommendations on how to do that. And some of them may be, so some of the, let me just say, you may say, wait, we want to go, build cell phone towers. I'm just making that up as a goal. And we're not sure how the public's going to react on that. So I will give you a recommendation on how to go vet that priority with the community and then bake it back into your processes. Does that make sense? We could do a little bit of it right now, but the timing is such a big concern here that
well, I mean, I wonder just about when we do have the meeting with all 3 commissioners where strategic planning is the focus of the public meeting that we're having. I just, I wonder if we could be just a little bit more intentional about how we do public comment, for example, maybe even having public comment at the beginning, because not everyone likes listening to us for multiple hours before providing public comment. So just maybe, and then, the commissioners could put that, I think we all have different channels of communication with our constituents, but we could use those channels to let folks know that we're doing this process. And if they want, they could come and do a 2-minute public comment about what they're, and maybe we even have a prompt in some way, or, I think we wouldn't want to just give the floor to, but I don't think we would get a tremendous amount of turnout, but I think just making it clear that we're here to listen would go a long way for folks. I'm not sure how other commissioners feel about that.
So speaking in support of your suggestion, the importance of getting, first of all, the importance of doing our best to incorporate public input. I very much think that makes sense to me as well. And then having effective outreach, which falls largely on the commissioners for that outreach, but also making sure that when we approve the agenda, we include opportunities to comment at the beginning and at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
John.
Thanks. To manage expectations here for a moment, this isn't a full strategic planning process. This was intended to be a high level, your review, and then identify areas that you may want to retarget, if you will, for more in-depth strategic planning session later, but also to retarget this to inform your job description of what you're looking for. This is kind of a 1.5-month process to reorient or make sure that your current plan is aligned with where your mission is for you're going to hire a new general manager. It wasn't contemplated that this scope would be a full strategic planning session. So I just want to manage expectations as we go forward, particularly for the public, and that this isn't going to be a fully baked, fully vetted strategic plan that people can really get their teeth into and get into actions or, all the implementation strategies or tactics. So just with that reminder, that's why I said it's a high level.
I appreciate that. Maybe the simplest way to approach this would just be to have 2 opportunities for public comment, because it is hard for some folks to be on the meeting for the whole time. But yeah, I didn't want to, sorry if I interrupted, Mike.
I think Steve was, if
Oh,
Mike,
yeah.
if I may.
Excuse me, just a thought is that I know Jim's got in his outline July 6th as the commission meeting. Our first regular meeting is not until the 13th of July. And just a thought is that you might consider holding a special meeting on July 6th with the initial discussion, as Commissioner Murphy talked about, amongst all three of you, and then have that as sort of the coming out to the public with, with where you're at that time. And then on July 13th, our regular meeting, have an opportunity at the beginning of that meeting for public comment before you, quote, give the blessing to move forward with the, with the job description and any changes. Just a thought.
I like that idea. Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you, O'Toole. Thank you for the questions. And John, in response to what you said, and to Jim, and to my fellow commissioners, when I think of strategic planning, I think of all the work, Jim, you remember all the days, weeks, months we sat together? That's not what this strategic planning then is about. Right now, it sounds like the strategic planning is basically just scratching the surface, but directing us through that towards a general manager. It's not talking about whether we build cell towers, as you said, or something else, so we're not really attacking the foundation of our strategic planning. We're skimming over it. Is that correct? John, Jim?
Well, I think the goal was to go to review it, those high priorities, those high goals, and make sure that's kind of give a commission review of that. Is that still the general direction? Because it's going to inform your job description and the attributes and talents of your candidates. And then to see if that needs to be reoriented in any way. Yeah, I mean, let's just say let's say you redirect to more broadband and renewable energy as priorities. And that, if that isn't heavy weighted and a focus point of your current strategic plan, if that's the sense of the commission, maybe you're doing a reorientation to that as a higher emphasis. And you do those broad brushstrokes. So I would say, it's kind of saying to my analysis, well, we're not going to go northwest. We're going to go more westerly than northwesterly. So we're going to redirect it west. We're not going to take the long way down. We're taking the long way around. I mean, if whatever metaphor you want to use or description, but I think it's just kind of a general redirection or confirmation, not we're writing out new goals and new policies and all the rest. That's my sense in this time frame. Jim or Steve, maybe.
Let me,
Commission, sorry.
yeah, if I can add to that, and that's correct. So think about it this way. What we're doing is how aligned are we on the priorities and goals that are in that existing strategic plan? Yeah, we've got pretty good alignment. Things have changed on this one maybe. And we've got a couple other areas we want to explore. I think you need to know that when you start recruiting somebody so they know that as well. But also part of what I want to do is give you a path forward to further exploring in a more, I don't want to say relaxed timetable, but a more reasonable timetable, going and looking at becoming the new cell phone tower builder in Whatcom County, and as an example. So it's as John said, it's sort of here's where we are. We've got great alignment on these things. We've got some new areas we want to explore. Here's some ways that we might pursue those going forward. And then your new candidate comes in and they know exactly what they're getting into.
I think, Jim, the way you described it to me a week and a half ago was we need to figure out if we want a plumber or an electrician. And I thought that clicked well for me.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. I forgot that. That was a good one though.
Steve, please.
I think that, Commissioner Grant made this statement, I think, a couple of meetings ago, and that was the commission needs to get aligned so when you bring in a new general manager, what your expectations are for that new general manager to do for you over the next 18 months. And otherwise you won't be able to, evaluate progress or lack of it. And I think that's really what this is all about.
So let's just put this in a context. the PUD has a process for developing a strategic plan. That process is in this special, we're making an exception and essentially modifying that process. And by doing that, probably creating some problems. Not, I wouldn't say huge problems, but something that we should just recognize. It's likely as a result of this process, and which is driven by the desire to select a new general manager. In that process, we may identify some goals and some strategies as well that are not fully fleshed out in documentation and traceable to a process. And we should just be aware of that. That's not, it's time to follow processes rigorously and religiously, but then there's times like this which require a little bit of minor adaptation. I think that, we're a cohesive group, and we're not dealing with a scandal. Thank goodness, at least not that I know of. And so I think that we'll be able to manage this process, but we should also realize there will be some wrinkles as a result of this process too.
That being the case, then the commission, my recommendation is a motion as outlined in the recommended action in the request for action memo.
So
I'll make a motion. Is there, are we done discussing it?
Well, I think before we proceed, there was a suggestion that General Manager Steve specifically suggested the idea of a special meeting on July 6th. And so perhaps we could amend the motion to include that, or we should have a separate motion to, or some other vehicle to request a special meeting, which we can do it either after or before we approve this motion.
My recommendation is that you take action on the agreement with Leeward, and then separate action to set a special meeting for July 6th.
That's fine with me. So let's do it in that order, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the consulting services agreement with Leeward Strategies.
And authorize the general manager to execute the same.
I will second that.
Okay.
And there's a motion and a second to execute a consulting services agreement with Leeward. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. So the second item we mentioned was that to set a special meeting for July 6th. So John, do we need to do a motion for that, or?
You and Steve can just set that under your authorities.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and make that request. Steve, you cool with that? Since you suggested it?
I got it.
Got it.
Okay, the next action then, Commissioner, if I may proceed, or Jim, you're going to be taking off.
Thanks so much. Well, you'll be pleased with the results. It's a little messy, but the outcome's always great. So, and once again, hats off for taking this approach. So I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, the next matter is the contract with the Prothman Company. This came about last week after I returned from my son's graduation. After the commission meeting, we modified the proposal to take excerpts out that were the contract terms, if you will, and not the pitch in the proposal, and included nearly verbatim in Exhibit A to the contract. The contract does have the provisions, Commissioner Grant, that you were seeking to assure that they would repeat the process at no professional fees other than their actual incurred inspection and expenses. And that was essentially also in their original proposal, provision in their proposal. You'll see that we provided that the expenses are to be approved in advance by the district. There was some concern by Prothman that would have to be every little line item. And I said, no, our expectation is that they would have a list of general expenses they would provide that were anticipated, and that we could, Steve or I could approve a master list in advance of those expenses, rather than saying, I have 20 paper clips, I have, whatever, we get a master list to approve. The concern being is what are the travel expenses, what are overnight expenses, and just trying to have some oversight of that. So the contract is there for your approval. It's the simple consulting services form, very similar to what you just approved with with Leeward Strategies, plus the addition that Commissioner Grant had wanted. This sure was in the agreement regarding repeating the process at no additional professional fee. Prothman's approach is that they would do that one repeat in a year.
Any discussion on the subject? And then let's proceed with a motion.
Commissioner, I'll just add that I've communicated with them that Jim Darling's going to prepare the job description and then would circulate it to them for final comment. And if they had any comment at the beginning of the process that there would be some overlap, they understood that. If there was a need to have an overlap of interviews, they would do that, but it may not seem necessary, depends on the timing, and the substance of the meetings may be different. The other component was that they will prepare the job salary range estimate after the job description is received, not Jim Darling.
And they felt good about that process, that we're working with Jim and then transitioning to working with them. Okay.
And I explained it that he had a lot of history in developing the existing strategic plan, and given the timing, we all felt him to be more efficient for him to just, there's no get up to speed time, and can transition easily, and they had no resistance.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certain from their perspective, the more clarity the commission has, the better it is for them. Any further discussion? So can we proceed with the motion?
I'll make the motion. Motion to approve consulting services agreement with Prothman, subject to the general manager's final approval of the agreement and Exhibit A thereto, and authorize the general manager to execute the same.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those please indicate support by saying aye.
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 The motion carries. And now under old business, we have an update to our broadband efforts, the position that we have open, as well as consulting services that we're pursuing. Go ahead, Steve.
Commissioners, thank you. And I'll just give you a brief update. We do have an item on our agenda later regarding the broadband manager position. So we are still investigating opportunities to select an individual to fill that position. In terms of our discussion, we've had some discussions with the Port of Bellingham. We advanced a first draft of an interlocal agreement between the PUD and the Port of Bellingham. We've copied that to you. We've had some discussion with their staff on that, initial responses on that, and we'll continue to work with the Port of Bellingham on advancing that to their commission, as well as back to you for hopefully final approval next month. We've also had some discussion, further discussion with NOAANET, and I see Claire Ward is on the call this morning, but we are trying to develop a much more, I would call it, focused approach and utilizing NOAA services to help us move ahead on the idea of doing a countywide mapping and modeling and speed test idea throughout the county. We've also had some discussion with folks at the city of Bellingham. We know that they, of course, are through their broadband committee, are reaching out to get proposals from consulting firms to do some of the same work. We've reached out to the Lummi Nation. We haven't had an opportunity to have direct communication yet with the individual there that's working on the same approach, looking at developing that mapping and service access idea on the reservation. And so what we're trying to do is trying to get some collective collaborative approach to doing this same type of work throughout Whatcom County, City of Bellingham, possibly the Lummi Nation, the PUD, and the Port of Bellingham. So we'll be able to advance those discussions over the next week or so and bring something more definitive to you at our first meeting in June. I see Debbie All is on the call this morning. We've reached out to her, and I know Commissioner Grant has had some discussion with Debbie at the Mount Baker Foundation about some possible funding that the foundation might be interested in bringing to support a collective amount of work with NOAA and the city, the port, the PUD, and possibly the Lummi on doing that work. So we're having all of those discussions, and hopefully we'll bring something much more definitive, like I said, to you in our first meeting in June.
Thank you, Steve. Commissioner Grant.
I just wanted to say thank you to Steve for getting the interlocal agreement put together and out to everyone. And I know it's a lot of work getting all that in one place. So just wanted to express gratitude for that. Thanks, Steve.
So I probably speak for all of us in saying that this is taking a significant amount of time. We're having some disappointments as it relates to finding someone suitable for the position. We were hopeful with the candidate, but it is appearing that may not be realized. This has created some complexity because of our support services are also affected by what we do in terms of hiring. And in the process of figuring out what we're trying to do, we're not necessarily making progress towards the needs of the community. It's important to acknowledge frustration. It's important not to be reactive. But I would say that I'm certainly speaking for myself, but probably speaking for more than just myself. I'm a little frustrated right now with where we're at on broadband. Unfortunately, I don't have any miraculous solution for the problem either. And nor do I think any one of us does at the present time. We have to be patient and keep working together to bring the resources to bear that we need to putting together a solid program. And towards that, I cannot emphasize enough the thing that I've been bringing up ever since I became a commissioner a couple of years ago, which is the need for understanding the lay of the land as it relates to who's served, who's not served, who's served competitively. And I really want to see us get that done. And we haven't gotten that done. And we can get that done. And I just want to see us get that done.
Are we going to have a longer discussion about the broadband services analyst hire under new business, or should we discuss that now?
I think we could have that discussion when we get to that agenda item, Commissioner.
Okay.
Any comments, Commissioner Murphy?
Thank you all too. I would say I share the same frustration, I guess, want to move forward, want to see something, but I understand. I appreciate Steve's work. I know it's just upsetting to him too. I mean, Steve, thanks for all the work you put in it. And then all of a sudden to run up against this, it's difficult. What is our next step then? Because I've read over the minutes, and there's so much being said in our minutes that, it's the next step for us to move forward with the port. It sounds like Gina or the port may have some kind of plan for Whatcom County already in place, mapped out, which I haven't seen, or are they just planning on going to Glacier like it says here? Sounds like Bellingham may be interested going from the backbone from Bellingham to Glacier. And that's another story. And then I'm confused why we're not getting a lot of support from all areas of the community. It sounds like Nooksack is going to go into searching out their own. It sounds like the city of Blaine and Sumas is searching out on their own. And this is really going to be a community effort to make this succeed. How do we achieve that?
Mm-hmm.
I think my best response to that concern and that question right now, Commissioner, is that that's the challenge that I am facing, and that I think that we as a PUD is facing right now, is this old statement about either lead, follow, or get out of the way. There are a lot of efforts by individual organizations like the port, like the city right now, and I referenced the Lummi Nation, city of Blaine, city of Sumas, I think are more engaged right now with ISPs, the private, and there's no collective leadership across the entire county on this issue. And the question I think before us is, how do we, if the PUD wants to create that leadership position and create a collaborative effort amongst, at least amongst the public agencies in the county, are we willing to do that? And that's significant in terms of what does that mean, and what does that mean not just to the PUD, but what does that mean to the other agencies that are advancing their own programs and projects? And so I don't have an answer to that, but I think that in the last week or so, that's been my attempt, is to try to herd the cats, if you would, and see if there's an opportunity where we can provide the impotence of or at least the idea of leadership, and bringing all the parties together that are interested in coming together, without standing up and saying, the PUD's got this, we'll take it from here. We don't want to do that. There's a lot of work, a lot of engagement, a lot of investment in terms of staff, and in some cases, a lot of dollars in advancing their individual goals and strategies and ideas, but trying to utilize that collaborative approach, and seeing if we're willing to try to develop that collective working together approach, what does that mean in terms of our leadership? So that's what we're trying to do right now. I think that's been the challenge over the last couple of years, working, trying to develop a partnership with the port. you know, what can we bring to the table as a PUD to help others advance their programs, their projects, and at the same time, look at all of Whatcom County as the PUD looks at, you know, all of Whatcom County, and how can we help advance this concept throughout Whatcom County without, you know, being the designated dictator leader, and without, you know, without ignoring everybody else's work. So I don't know if that answers your question, Mike. That's the challenge right now. So.
It does. I'm sorry, Christine.
Oh, yeah.
Should I go
Go ahead.
forward?
Mhm.
Thank you. It takes me back, Steve, when you look at the history of the Whatcom PUD, you know, why are we even here? And it was the Granges, the farmers that came together and said, there's a lot of people out there providing power, but we can't get it. And it sounds like a lot like today. There's people out there providing broadband, but we can't get it. And what kind of service do we get when we get it? So it sounds like, anyhow, that's how I look at it, so.
Commissioner Grant.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, and I know we're gonna talk about it more later under new business, but I think that another challenge that we're facing is just the lack of staff resources to work on this. And so we're asking Steve and Brian to fit this in on top of very full plates. And I think the commissioners are trying to fill in and sometimes are playing roles that might be more aligned with staff roles. So we're all sort of trying to spread the burden. And I think that's why it was so disappointing that we're basically back at square one with the hire because of the disappointing news yesterday. And that's just, as I've said before, this market, especially in broadband, is just incredibly hard. Hiring is very hard in many industries right now. And I think the mapping exercise is incredibly important, and you know, look forward to hopefully working with NOAANet to help with that. But I think that it's going to be really hard for us to be successful without having a PUD staff person that's focused on this. And so the reason why I asked Steve, you know, about when we're going to talk about this is because, and I know you're still probably processing your disappointment a little bit, but I think that we really need to ask you how we can support you with the next step with recruitment. And what does that mean? Does that mean we need to have Prothman help us find this hire? Do we need to be posting other places? You know, because I think we're only going to be as successful as our team is. And right now we're short staffed. We're playing with a team that's not complete. And I think it's really difficult for us to make progress when we don't have that staff person that's able to focus 100% on broadband. That's my assessment of the situation.
I think very well stated, Commissioner.
So regarding the staff person, you made a suggestion about potentially using a recruitment firm. Is certainly something that I think Steve will think about, along with other possibilities to improve our situation as it relates to resources. Regarding leadership, 2 years ago, the board was taking a leadership role. The PUD was somewhat of a consultant, a participant, but more of a consultant. And now we're moving more into a co-lead type position. 2 years ago, the city was not involved at all. Today, the city is exploring what their involvement is. And it's likely, based on my attendance at the Broadband Advisory Group meetings to date, that this city council will recommend some level of engagement and involvement in public fiber. Today, the Whatcom County government is not engaged at all in the process. Not in any negative, it's not a negative statement, it's just they're not engaged. But I think that the public is going to be asking the county government as well to be engaged. So as Commissioner Murphy identified, there's clearly a groundswell of public sentiment for local governments to be involved. There's also resistance in local government to be involved because to the degree that some still see broadband as a non-essential, not an essential service. And then that makes it a little bit a more difficult thing to prioritize it for those who see it that way. Having said all of that, we're going through a process of getting both engagement and identifying leadership. So I'm not at all I don't think, Steve, you would at all misconstrue that the absence of leadership is a shortcoming on anyone's part. It's something that we have to discover, though. And the quicker we do that, the better. But we also have to recognize the participants and the level of engagement in terms of local governments is still evolving. So, we're going to have to continue to, I think maybe this isn't our only frustrating experience. We're going to have more over the next couple of years. And we just have to be patient with each other, stick together, and push forward for what we all perceive that the community wants. And that will take there will be hiccups and road bumps along the way and slowness, unfortunately, but that's just the way it works. Unfortunately. Yeah. I hope there's days that where we're coming back and say, well, that happened fast. We can celebrate that. So anyway. Is there further discussion on this item? Okay, so then let's move on to new business. The first item on the new business are, actually the first two items are, I assume Brian's going to take the lead on? Great. Please
Morning,
proceed.
Commissioners.
Good morning.
Since the last commission meeting, we received 3 formal requests from PUDs for transfers of a portion of our Bonneville EEI budget to them. As I stated at the last commission meeting, this wasn't unexpected. We're nearing the end of the Bonneville 2-year rate period, and a lot of the utility customers of Bonneville that get EEI budget have expended their funds and are looking elsewhere to get funding to complete work they have for the rest of this year. So before you today, the first transfer request that I have is for Jefferson County PUD. They have asked for a transfer of $100,000 of our budget so they can complete work, primarily residential commercial program work that they either have underway or they have requests for services from customers in their service territory. So what we're asking for is an approval of the interlocal agreement with Jefferson PUD that then facilitates the transfer of the $100,000 in budget. Okay. Any questions or?
Do we have a motion? Or is there further discussion? Mike, please. Thank you. Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you all too. Oh, Brian, I have to say this, but you know how I feel. I will say it again, that EEI money, I believe, is for Whatcom County. I think it's over $600,000 if I remember. Close
it's
to
about,
it, right?
About $550,000 was our budget for this 2-year rate period.
And I have to believe, we may have to think out of the box, but I have to believe there's a way that we could keep that money here serving our community. I know we used it with Sumas. I know we used it with Blaine. They're doing residential. We put in the lights down through Blaine on the street lights. We've done that, and we've done other things there as well as out in Sumas. But to me, it's still not reaching the community like I'd like to see it reach. And when I had that opportunity to talk to the past CEO of BPA, he and I sat down and I asked him frankly, and he said, just bring your ideas to us. We're open. He actually acted like it was our money, but they do have to approve the spending. And I would like to challenge our PUD to find ways that we can use that. Solar projects, wind. There's just so many different things. Maybe we could put in charging stations or something, some way to serve Whatcom County instead of sending it out of our county. But I'm going to approve these. I'll be a part of that approving it because the money's there. These other PUDs, I'm good at supporting them, but I think our community comes first.
Commissioner Grant.
Just want to echo, I agree with everything that Commissioner Murphy just said. And I was in communication with the mayor of Sumas about last week about this, just to let him know that we have more funds. And I am planning to talk with council member Davidson from the city of Blaine, just to let him know. I don't think that they're going to overnight be able to come up with a big energy efficiency program. But as I said, I think 2 meetings ago, I think the first step is letting our public utilities in Whatcom County, which is Blaine and Sumas, know that we could support larger efficiency programs or work in partnership with them. So as the commissioner, I'm reaching out to other electeds to let them know about that. And then, just see where it goes from there. So I just wanted to say that I am trying to follow up on what I said I would do 2 meetings ago. But for now, I also agree, supporting our sister PUDs is better than nothing at this point. But agree, Mike, that I would like to see us find some more creative ways to keep this money in Whatcom County.
Yeah, and I would like to reiterate that I support everything that Commissioner Murphy and Commissioner Grant said, and thank Commissioner Grant for doing
Look at
the
that
outreach.
alignment.
So, and you could have predicted these comments perhaps as well. So,
Well, as you're aware, our sort of informal policies will try to target our electric system first and our electric customers' facility for energy efficiency projects. Then we look out to Blaine and Sumas, see if they have some need. It's only after we've exhausted those 2 avenues, then we go outside, and we only entertain, informally requests from small to mid PUDs, because we feel the larger systems like a Snohomish PUD or Clark County PUD down in Vancouver have resources of their own and don't need that assistance that the smaller ones do. So I think it does build us some political capital when we do go outside of the county. But yeah, for sure, our priority is in county, and particularly our system and our customer.
any further discussion on items 5A, 5B?
No, I can make a motion.
Is it okay to make a motion to approve both, or would we like to do them separately?
I would suggest you take them separately.
That's what I was going to say, trying to come off mute here, yes.
Great.
Here we go. I'll make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement with Jefferson County PUD and the transfer of $100,000 of the district's BPA EEI program budget, and authorize the district's general manager to sign the agreement implementing the transfer.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 So the next item on agenda is 5B, basically the same arrangement, but with Grays Harbor PD.
I can just do it again. I'm going to make a motion to approve the interlocal agreement with Grays Harbor County PUD and the transfer of $100,000 of the district's BPA EEI program budget, and authorize the district's general manager to sign the agreement implementing the transfer.
I'll second that.
And there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That also carries. So we're on to 5C, which is to approve the 2022 draft budget development schedule. Are you going to handle that, Steve, or Annette?
Annette will take this, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Good morning. Believe it or not, it's time to start doing budget again.
Mhm.
Feel like, at least for me, it feels like we just passed it, but we do need to get started. And this is kind of our first step. We try to set out the schedule so we can see where we have and what our benchmarks are we need to target. So, and then we can get it on everybody's schedule. So that's simply what this is.
And I think thank you, Ned. I think the one thing that you can see in the draft schedule is that the commissioner will receive the first half of 2021 financial report in August, and that will be hopefully, after you have gone through your work with Jim Darling and set the direction for the selection of the new general manager, which working with Jim, one of the things that Jim didn't bring up, I think, and what we have had discussion in the past about doing that work with Jim and preparing for the selection of the new GM. Part of that is also helping staff develop the 2022 budget, because what comes out of your work in June with Jim and proceeding with the selection of the new GM should help us inform, what the parameters are for the 2022 budget. So.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 budget schedule as it is presented to the commissioners for the operating and capital budget and for rates and changes for water and electrical services.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the budget development schedule, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
And the motion carries. So next item on our agenda is to approve resolution number 792 regarding the employee compensation policy.
Commissioners, this is a request to amend the policy for employee compensation. Essentially what it is just two minor changes on one position, and that is resetting the salary range for what we had been calling the broadband analyst position to increasing that salary range, and also renaming the position from broadband analyst to broadband manager. And it's really a reflection of our attempt to receive applicants for the position, and then recognizing the competition that we were facing in terms of the industry, both public and private sector, in attracting people with skills that we felt would really that they would need to bring to us to accomplish what our expectations were. And so that's what this recommendation is. In regards to this, just generally though, I think we're seeing the same situation with some of the other positions that we have now open. The electric utility analyst or energy analyst position, the project manager position. We're seeing some of the same competition, if you would, and lack of qualified applicants for those positions. And every year Anne does a great job in reviewing both public and private sector positions and salary ranges. And she did that again for 2021, taking the 2020 information that we had, or that she had. But I think that we're seeing just in the last couple of years, significant changes in salary ranges for some positions, especially any positions that require technical training, education, as well as experience. And so I think what you'll see coming up in our budget for 2022 And if not prior to that, some of the other positions that we need to look at increasing those salaries to attract competent and qualified candidates. So that's all I had on this. I know both Commissioner Grant and Commissioner Murphy have some comments.
Please, Commissioner Grant.
Oh, well, you know, I know, Steve, you and I talked about this, and it's possible I brought this up at other meetings, but there's, you know, clearly big demographic trends that are playing into all of this. And having had a few more discussions about this with other people that work for utilities, there's an increasing trend to hire folks and then train them on the job. And so I think that the feedback I've received about the broadband analyst manager position job description is that I think a lot of people just don't feel qualified for it. And so, you know, maybe, you know, we need to make it a little bit more clear that this is a position that we would be able to offer some trainings for an individual because there's a lack of skills in this area. It's a growing field. So, and I think that that's true with the electrical analyst position too. You know, just thinking too about in the long term, you know, whether we want to have any sort of internship programs or ways to bring more inexperienced individuals in and then kind of help them grow into the role. So I've mentioned this to Steve, but I just wanted to say it so that the other commissioners could hear those thoughts as well. So
Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you, Atul. Yeah, Steve, I thank you for changing the title because I never thought it was an analyst we really wanted to hire. I always thought it was a manager anyhow. So I appreciate you changing it to a broadband program manager. However, the salary I see here and the struggle you're having finding someone, and I appreciate what Christine said, training. What do you feel is our next step? What is it a money issue? Is it we need to bring someone in and we offer the training? What do you think will take us to that position of hiring somebody?
Well, first of all, I appreciate what Commissioner Grant had mentioned and suggested, and I think that's a great opportunity, and I do think that we need to take a look at those opportunities. The challenge with looking at bringing someone in on either of those positions and providing I'll call it a first step approach, you know, bringing that person in with hopefully at least some education and some experience in these areas, I think is a good approach. And so in terms of financially, that would not be a challenge, I don't think. I think that even if we look at the absolute bottom end of both of these salary ranges, I think that we could attract someone under those conditions. But the problem is, as Commissioner Grant mentioned earlier in the meeting, we don't have staff capacity. We don't have staff time to create an internship and training program. We simply don't, right now, we don't have the staff capacity to do that. So I think that's a situation or an idea that we can consider, but at the same time, our staff capacity, just in terms of time resources, are limited across, the project manager, the energy piece that Brian is trying to manage, and at the same time, if we bring someone on, say in the broadband position, we need the ability to actually mentor and work with that individual. So it's an approach that we certainly will consider. But And I know that some of the other PUDs, the larger PUDs, are doing just what Commissioner Grant indicated across pretty much the entire spectrum of their staff, whether it's operations, whether it's internal in the office, accounting and finance, whether it's resource management. I know that I've had some discussion with a couple of the larger PUDs on the energy side, and they're doing just that, but they have the capacity to bring someone on and have staff capacity to help bring them along, if you would. At the same time, if you just go to the PUD Association website, I did that yesterday. Chelan County PUD, for instance, has 19 positions open. 19 positions open, and they can't fill them. And I don't think money, in terms of attracting qualified candidates, I don't think money is the issue. Although when you get into qualified candidates, or the qualifications that have to have an engineering degree or have to have a master's in finance or something like that, obviously you get the folks like Amazon and Microsoft and others in the Seattle area that are they're paying twice what the PUDs have typically been paying. So, but we'll certainly look at all options. And I do think that without delaying this, the trying to attract candidates for either of these positions without delaying it anymore, I do think that the next month, your discussions with Jim Darling and looking at strategies and direction, I think that'll help us maybe more clearly define, what those candidates should look like that we're trying to attract.
Thank you. Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you. Say, Steve, you said some interesting things there about other PUDs, and I thought training would be really great, but we're not really in a position to train somebody in this area of being a broadband manager. It sounds like we need to get somebody that can get going right away. We cannot wait another 2 or 3 years for training because we're not that big. Training's a great idea. So is there any way we could hire a consultant, a firm or something that could step in and do this at 110,000? You think you'd find some firm that want to step in and work with us. And then at the same time, when you fill that position, then we move on. This way we're moving forward. We're not going to wait 6 months or a year. I have no idea if you'll even find somebody. So it's a question.
So yeah, so Commissioner Murphy, to dovetail onto, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Thanks for bringing that up. And perhaps it's possible to find a consultant that can provide some degree of services and also help us in the recruitment process, particularly if it's a junior recruit. But overarching all of this, I'm not certain that what we want to ask for is a shift of the position just up in salary and position title, but maybe a broadening of possibilities. Now, I don't know what, this is a delicate issue. It's very important that the commission respect the boundaries of the general manager and the responses of general manager. Now, we have a general manager who's amazingly facilitative and supportive of the commission and doesn't, I know you appreciate the help of the commission, and I understand that. I'm just not in any way saying that you don't. But I also want to respect our role and your role and at the same time, just wonder that maybe we should be broadening the parameters that we have to work with rather than narrowing them so that the different pieces that could come to the table, consultants, more junior people, so on and so forth, are at your disposal to create the kind of team development that we need. So I just wanted to offer that. Steve, I think you were about to speak, and I
No, I think Commissioner Grant raised her hand too.
Go ahead, Steve. If you want to respond to that.
I think that the idea of just again bringing someone on to fill either of these positions, I think is weighing heavily on myself and Brian, because we're trying to look forward maybe a year and a half to 2 years, hopefully a little longer for Brian, as to looking at what existing staff can help the commission transition to, to the next 15 years, recognizing that we've got some key positions that, whether it's 2 years or 3 years, will be gone. And so it's trying to develop that administrative structure that is not at all in a quote, I'll just say, creating a, we want to make sure that the void that we see coming, at the same time, trying to recognize where you all want to see an increase in services, and how we do that. I think that we're feeling, pretty challenged, if that's the way to say it, in accomplishing that for you. And so I appreciate, I think, what Commissioner Grant and what Commissioner Desmani said earlier. We just try to take every day at a time, and trying to work with you to figure out how we accomplish this. So, but Commissioner Grant.
I think John, did you have your hand up? If you want to speak.
Yeah, I appreciated all the creative ideas and solutions. I had another thought that might be totally disruptive, but listening to some of the earlier comments on the broadband position and the need for a county and agencies to come together to look at a countywide focus, just to put it out there, another idea would be that you, through interlocal agreements with the city, the county, the port, create a broadband consortium, and the entities hire a position that is focused. You might offer a higher salary by everybody coming together and have a broadband lead for the county. And you could create essentially an agency to do this. You would lose control as a PUD because it would be managed by a consortium of representatives of the various agencies. But that might be another approach, take a little bit longer to develop and implement, but it could have a broader county focus. But if it's that significant of an issue, it's something to be thinking about. And like I said, it could be totally disruptive to the discussion you were just having, but it's just another approach.
Steve, please.
And that was one of the other things I was going to add in my last comments, and I lost it in terms of my train of thought. But that's one of the approaches that we want to talk to NOAANET and possibly a couple of our electrical consultants, like TEA, for instance, and doing just what I think Christine might have mentioned, and that is, do we utilize consultants in those areas of expertise, knowing that maybe BKI and TEA or others on the energy side, and look at what services we want them to provide, but at the same time to fill the quote, I'll call it the analyst position or the staffing positions in the shorter term, but then help us do just what, an idea that John just brought up, and that is look at how we build a consortium across Whatcom County on these issues at the same time. And in that process, you can then help get help from those consultants and collectively, possibly from some of the other participants in, in the consortium with applicants to fill staffing positions here. So just a thought.
Thank you, Steve. So certainly a rich topic, and I'm glad to see that in the participants, we've got folks listening to the conversation and may have more ideas. And just to respond, John, to your reticence, but please don't have any reticence. And this goes for the whole team here. We need to be creative at this particular time. So it's always true that no idea is a bad idea. It's definitely worth considering. But this is particularly a situation where that's true. And so let's all do our best to think of solutions to improving our competence and capacity in these areas.
I have a comment and then a question. I think the comment relates to something that Commissioner Deshmani was saying about broadening the position. And, certainly we don't want to hire someone that is not qualified, but at the same time, I could spend so much time every week on broadband webinars. There's so many ways to educate yourself right now. I think just in general, we live in a time when you can really learn a lot if you're motivated. Not to mention that because of all the grant funding coming, just like the telecom webinar that Atul and I both did, those are opportunities that a staff person could be a part of. All those speakers said, feel free to follow up with me. A motivated staff person that we bring on could learn a tremendous amount quickly without too much hand-holding, I would hope. So I just want to, put that out there, that's one option, just to really get that staff support that we need. So that's my comment, just kind of echoing that, that could be a good option. Gina Stark didn't have any formal training in broadband before she took this, as far as I know, before she began this work. And it's changing so quickly that I think we're all kind of self-taught in some ways. And then the question I have for you, Steve, and you might not have an answer right now, is just how can we as commissioners support you going forward with this?
I think the best way is to just continue to individually and as a commission have these discussions. I will do the same, communicate back and forth as to, our ideas, my ideas, your ideas on how we approach this. And I think the next month or so, your discussion amongst yourselves and with Jim about, setting that direction, if you would, or focusing on, especially on some of these key issues, and just be flexible and recognizing that we're all trying to do what we're trying to do. And so I'm continuing to be very open to your recommendations, your contacts, your ideas. I think that's the best we can do right now.
Thank you. So there's no motion on there is a motion on this item 5B to amend the administrative employees compensation policy. Steve, you want us to proceed with that?
I would recommend you do. I don't think that, I think that at this time, setting the salary range is especially a little bit higher than what we had certainly will not inhibit our opportunities to attract someone. And if you noticed, we retained the bottom end of the salary range lower than the top of what it was before. So creating that significant range gives us an opportunity to work with potential candidates. So I would recommend that you do proceed.
Great. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 792 as it's been presented to the commissioners.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor of well, is there any further discussion? Just want to make sure. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, the motion passes. And let's move on to 5E on our agenda to approve the work order number 16 with RH2 Engineering. Is that Rebecca?
No, that will be Brian.
Right, okay.
Commissioners, in the approved 2021 budget, we identified an extraordinary maintenance capital project that was RWM 7. What this project is an upgrade to our D station, which is a valve station that controls the flow of our industrial water to the BP refinery ponds. The upgrade is necessary because of basically end-of-life antiquated equipment in that station. And we needed to replace for reliability purposes and also for better flow control into the BP ponds. So what work order 16 with RH2 is for them to do the engineering design work based on an improvement option we agreed to previously, and help us prepare the bid package for that design. What we are intending to do is replace the main valve in D station and also install bypass piping that would allow us to work on sections of the piping or valve without taking the flow water into the BP ponds offline. It's definitely a significant reliability improvement for us. The other thing in the design we've asked RH2 to do is to put in piping, and what we're looking at are piping tees and flanges, so that at a later date we could come back and look at an additional project to install a micro turbine in that water flow to the ponds and generate electricity. So that would be a follow-on. The budget for this work order 16 is identified as $85,064. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question.
Commissioner Grant.
What is a hydroing event?
This is when both BP and Phillips 66 refineries will periodically clean their storage tanks, which are they contain their products, and so they have to flush those tanks with water.
Right.
And so that's the hydroing event. It's, you know, so there's this significant uptick in water use during those periods. We have an arrangement with both refineries under our industrial water agreements with them that they can do this and with advance notice. So typically every year at different periods, we'll have hydroing at one or the other refineries.
Okay. And then one other question is just, have we talked to BPA about this idea of the micro turbine installation for generating electrical power?
We have talked to them in general, and you know, as discussed in a previous meeting, there would be funding. We could use the EEI funding in an indirect way by using the utility incentive that we get from doing energy efficiency projects from them. So we could siphon off a portion of that utility incentive budget for our own use. And in that case, they don't define whether it's for energy efficiency or generation or whatever. So And as I mentioned previously, we already have a fund set up to do that. We have about $8,500 in utility incentives sitting there to apply.
Great, thanks.
Any further questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve work order number 16 as it has been presented to the commission. Can I just say that, John, or should I say the whole thing?
That's fine.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. So let's move on to the general manager's report.
Commissioners, the only thing I had was that with the recent governor's executive action on opening for all public venues, public meetings, I have asked John to look at and bring back to us a memorandum on what that really means, the governor's direction really means in terms of our opening up our commission meetings for to the public. And John I think he's going to try to get that to us next early part of next week.
That's correct.
And then also, if we do consider opening the public or the meetings to the general public in July, the governor's proclamation said June 30th, that we have to be prepared to provide both in-person meetings here, but also the issue of overflow and still retaining, access online. And so staff is working on, what kind of technology we can and have to provide here at our offices. So I would expect that on our first meeting in June, your first meeting in June, we'll have a recommendation about all of that. So just want to give you a heads up that we're working on that, and hopefully we'll have a good path forward to accommodate both in person and continuing online. So that's all I had, Commissioners.
Thank you. Let's move on to Commissioner reports. Commissioner Murphy, Commissioner Grant.
I have none.
Okay, Commissioner Grant.
I was our representative for the Northwest Public Power Association annual meeting, and we elected new board members, and there were updates from representatives from each of the states that are part of the association, legislative updates. But one thing that did come up that was worth mentioning is, just sort of an anecdotal discussion of the fact that for many utilities, COVID cases have been very, very low for many, many months, almost no workplace transmission, but cases have been rising at some utilities recently. So just sort of a call to utilities for everyone to continue being vigilant and talking with trusted medical professionals about how to protect each other in the workplace. So just wanted to mention that was a trend that was discussed at the meeting. And then both Commissioner Deshmani and I were at the PUD telecommunications conference, and that was really helpful. I shared some notes from Scott Dawson with Steve Jilk, hoping that we might be able to pass them on to our new broadband hire. But just this discussion about the I think I don't remember his words exactly, but Scott Dawson definitely said, he's never seen this amount of federal funding for broadband before. So some really interesting topics, and Atul will probably mention this too, but I think one of the biggest challenges that we're all facing as PUDs right now is the supply of fiber. So it's taking at least a year for most people to get fiber after they order it. And so just a really big delay between, coming up with a plan and construction. And there was some discussion about whether a group of PUDs could form a cooperative of some sort to have more purchasing power. There's a lot of complexities about that in terms of specifications for the fiber and storage and things like that. So no concrete plans around that, but that was kind of a theme that I think is worth sharing. So that's kind of it for me.
So I attended a very brief Whatcom Council of Governments meeting 2 weeks ago, and then this last week I met with Reese Roth of the Sustainable Energy Infrastructure outfit and listened to their ideas. At the core of their ideas is a concept of identifying community needs for infrastructure among participants in a kind of an industrial sector, and a desire to create an industrial ecology among those participants. Certainly important concepts, good concepts. Our business culture tends to be fiercely independent, more so than in Denmark and places where this is happening more so. Having said so, as a public entity, we can certainly foster some of those kinds of discussions, certainly at Cherry Point. And it's good to hear that perspective. And I look forward to continuing to stay in dialogue as ideas present themselves. There's perhaps opportunities for community industrials, thermal energy in collaboration with the refineries, if that's something that they want to do. There's opportunities also for, of course, electricity production and energy for the Cherry Point industrial zone. And it occurs to me that there could be a forum of some kind if certainly our customers and other industrial players in the region and the PUD for sure, and then the port as well, might benefit from discussions along this line. So right now it's all ideas, but in general, the concept of working together is attractive and important. But it's as always, the devil is in the detail. Because the telecom workshop intersected with the 2021 Charge Conference, I contacted the organizers of the 2021 Charge Conference, for which the PUD registered myself, and I believe Commissioner Grant too. I'm not sure. But anyway, that was on Thursday, the 20th. They'll have the recording available in, I assume, in another week. And I'll, even though I attended and I think we paid some, maybe we did pay, I don't remember if we did, it was some nominal fee.
It was a nominal fee.
Yeah, I'll be glad to report on that after I see it. And I look forward to doing that. Regarding the telecom workshop, one other thing I'd like to make as an observation, thank you for your summary, Commissioner Grant. One of the things I'd like to add to that is that the definitions of shovel ready, which is kind of like the hurdle that we all have to get through to be able to access federal funding, are a little bit up in the air. And when we have a situation like that, I kind of tend to embrace it doesn't hurt to ask. So I think that if there is anything that we can identify in our community, and obviously most of that would be under the leadership of the port, because we don't have any plans, so to speak, yet at this point at the PUD. We should encourage that those be put forth, because at least worst it can we can hear back from federal sources is no, but it's better to ask and to be told no than to not even ask. So I just wanted to share that, and it's probably not something that is so actionable for the PUD. I have also mentioned in the past that I've been attending a series of meetings that have been going on with community members on wanting to create local loops. And there is one project off of Y Road that is maybe sufficiently advanced to be able to fall into the category of shovel ready. And it's basically a project that would be served by either Wave or Pogo Zone, and would deploy a neighborhood fiber optic network, getting its backhaul or backbone from either a Wave's existing fiber that goes by there on Mount Baker Highway, or a optical line of sight connection from a tower that Mount Baker Foundation is helping to set up, helping Pogo Zone to establish and set up. So that is something that I plan to follow up with you, Steve, to discuss in more detail. It's just a topic that got discussed yesterday in the meeting. And so it's just informational at this point, but there's potential for there to be something that one might consider to be shovel ready as a local as something that the PUD might potentially be able to help, at least provide letters of support or something like that. So,
Commissioner, could I just comment on that last? I've had discussions over the last several months with folks at Pogo Zone and requested from them that they identify up to 5 areas in Whatcom County, such as what you're suggesting, that where the PUD and Pogo Zone might get together and do just what I think that they're working with Mount Baker Foundation on, and that is areas where they could provide services, connect to fiber if fiber was available, but they would provide their services through wireless. That's really what they do, and that identify places and projects where the PUD might join with them and actually provide the fiber link, and that we could partner with them identifying projects. So, and I just yesterday afternoon, I finally received from Pogo Zone several maps of identifying areas in the county that we can advance with. So,
yeah, that's excellent. We maybe be able to have some degree of public-private collaboration to help access federal funding,
right,
as well as making a dent in it,
yeah,
making a dent. And that's one of the things that George Kahn of Wapuda said at the end of the telecom workshop that I thought was important to share as well was that we took some big steps in this legislative session. There are still things to be fleshed out. I'm confused as a person can be as what the governor's thinking about signing both bills. And I'm not going to even I don't want to discuss it more because I'm just confused. But I have to say that even then, it's irregardless, it's a huge step forward for the public utility community. And what we should try to do is set our eyes on early wins. And those, by definition, mean seeking out smaller projects where we can actually have a positive impact to the community. You know, that was his thought, and I think that is, you know, what I've been thinking about, and just, you know, take one step at a time. Yeah, community wants big things, but we don't get to big things without taking little steps. So just I felt that was an uplifting message too, because it's like, we don't have to do it all. We just have to take one important step and let ourselves build inertia by doing that. That's my comments. So with that, are we ready to move to public comment?
Right now, we don't have anybody.
Well, I wanted to thank all the participants. We have a great turnout today for PUD. Okay, so we're going to get done pretty early. John, do you want to do a last minute executive session or something to try to make a longer meeting?
You know, anytime you give a lawyer a chance to talk on open-ended, we could go till 5 p.m. if you like, but I really don't have anything to add unless you really want me to filibuster.
Anything else for the good of the order? Great. Well, I think that concludes our Whatcom PUD meeting. Everyone have a lovely day, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.